Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today, very special guest, former three-time WWC Tag Team Champion. He's been a journeyman. He's been everywhere. WWF, WCW, you name it. You may know him as Dale, but we, of course, know him as Dusty Wolfe. Dusty, welcome to Two-Man Power Trip. How you doing?
Hey, how you?
Good. What's going on in your world? What have you been up to?
Just been staying busy. Staying busy being married to a little crazy woman, 10-year-old son at this age, and 4 grandkids, and teaching at college. And just every time I turn around, there's something going on.
Nice. What are you teaching?
History and government.
Nice. Awesome. How's that going? I mean, that's interesting. Wrestling.
I enjoy it. I don't have a lot of fun at midterm and finals, but other than that, I enjoy it. I really do.
Where are you teaching at?
I'm teaching at like 6 different campuses. 5 of them online, and then one of them right here in San Antonio, Northwest Vista.
Oh, awesome. How did you get into the teaching realm?
Well, it was time to quit. You know, I'd been in the business almost 30 years at the time, and I had to do something. And I didn't know what. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I decided to go back to college, and then just as I was making my way through college, trying to figure out what I was going to do, you know, like I was 20 again or something, I had some good mentors that came along, and I went the teaching route. You know, I got my master's in a couple of different disciplines, and people put me to work when they said they would, and I just kind of floated into it. It was just one of those things where when I started to retire, I had no clue what I was going to do, and it just kind of made my way to it. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I had no plans when I started.
And now you're teaching, like you said, 6 different campuses. Pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So also you do have a book out as well, Journeyman.
The book's out. It's on Amazon. I wrote it here a few years back. As I say, it's on Amazon. It's there if anybody was interested. Yeah.
Journeyman: Life and Times of an Indie Wrestler.
Life and Times of a Journeyman. Yeah. Journal of a Journeyman. That's what it is. Journal of a Journeyman. I'd have to go look it up and get off my shelf.
Yes. Yeah. Now, what made you want to write the book?
I was dared to.
Really? By who?
A couple of guys that were getting into the book business, you know, in the Memphis area. I think they had Dundee's book and somebody else's book and at the time, and they dared me. And so I did it.
What was the experience like doing it? Did you enjoy it?
Yes and no. At times I'm wondering, like, why did I? But it's also, you can leave behind a little something for others. You know, so. It's one of those, like I said, it's one of those things I got dared to do it. I did it. And, there was no, like a lot in my life, there was no real huge, what's the word for it? Huge impetus or anything of that nature. It was just, let's see what happens.
No real grand plan. It just was.
No, absolutely. I don't think I've had a grand plan in all my life. I mean, and when I did, I ended up married to her. You know, that's it. I just do. That's been my whole career, been my whole life, my adult life at least. I just do. And if it works, I keep doing it. And if it doesn't, I change courses.
When you look at, history and all that stuff aside, when you actually got into the wrestling business all the way back in, early 80s here, was that a plan at all? Did you want to be a wrestler?
Yeah, it was. I won't lie about that. I had no idea how I was going to do it. And it was very difficult, in 81, when I was like an 18-year-old kid looking to get into wrestling. There was no schools. There was no, $25 down and $100 a week or whatever they do nowadays. There was none of that. It was a plan. Again, I jumped in, feet first, and then I'll figure it all out later. It's probably what, like Ray Wally Hubbard says in one of his songs, was one of the first of many mistakes I was about to make. And it just kept happening, and I kept pushing and taking advantage of whatever was being offered, and that's how I got started. Yeah. it was a grand scheme of the idea. I want to be in the business. I want to give the business a try. How? I had no clue. None.
Were you always a fan?
Pretty much. With me, it was always baseball, wrestling, football in that order. As far as what I played, watched, or anything like that, didn't play a lot of football. I played enough football to learn I was better on the baseball field. I belonged on the baseball field. And but as far as watching, yeah, those are the three sports I always watched. Yeah.
What were you a fan of wrestling wise as far as like territories or promotion?
Oh, when I first noticed wrestling, it was the old McGurk territory when he had Watts and Hodge and Robley and Garvin and those guys on top. And then right after that, we moved. Again, my dad was in the military, so we had to go from town to town a little bit for a little while. Then when we moved, Amarillo was on like twice a week on the one station. I couldn't tell you what station it was to save my life today, but they were on Thursday nights and then they were on Saturday afternoons. And they caught my attention. And then right after that, we started getting the Dallas tape. So those were the first places I ever saw wrestling. It was, McGurk and then Amarillo and Dallas.
Did you have some favorite wrestlers like the Funks as well, or
Yeah, Hawks, Dickie. Growing up, definitely Dickie. Dickie was Harley. I'll never tell anybody different. Harley. Yeah, I thought Harley was great. I think Dickie was the greatest. Him or Terry, as far as I was growing up. I always liked Hodge, the way he made things just so legitimate looking. At that time, I had no idea it was just that stiff with him. But he could get over. Robley, when Robley was still working and a younger man, Robley was a great worker. Guys like that, yeah.
those were the days?
You're 10, 11, 12 years old. You don't understand everything that's going on, but you recognize the great ones. Or at least I could. I thought I did. And I always would watch those guys. There's others. Like one of the purest baby faces I ever saw in my life was Jose Lothario. And I didn't realize that what he was at the time. I just knew that he connected with the people. And he was amazing in the 70s. Oh, yeah.
Did you go to the matches? Did you go to the shows?
Not as often as I would have liked. I mean, until we came back to San Antonio when I was like 12, there were no live matches in the little towns that my dad had us in because of the Air Force. When we came back to San Antonio, I went, but I didn't go nearly as much as I'd like. It was like once a month, once every 2 months. Yeah.
When you did go and you're like going to the matches, did that really now I have to do this? I got to be a wrestler. This is awesome.
When you're 12, 13, oh, yeah. You're sitting in the third, fourth row, and you see guys that are larger than life. There's no denying it. You're like, that's going to be me one day. And it ended up being me one day. But, yeah, that's exactly what it is. You're sitting and you're watching this. The only thing you've ever seen, you've seen on TV before. That's it. But then you sit there watching it live, and it hooks you. At least it did me.
Do you still watch today or no?
I don't know what they're doing. I honestly don't. I mean, they're not. They're great athletes, and some of them are doing things that are just absolutely mind-boggling when you watch what they're doing physically. But I don't understand what they're doing as far as the match itself goes, or let's get into the next week, or let's go, or the psychology, lack of psychology. I don't understand it. So I just don't. I'm not interested. I haven't paid attention. I'm trying to think the last time I actually followed everything. About the time Flair got his big retirement from Vince, that was probably the last time I watched a full show. And that's been, 12, 15 years now?
Yeah, it's been a while. Yep.
Yeah.
Even though Flair last year had his quote-unquote last match, his WWE retirement was about 15
I'm just
years
giving
ago.
you a reference point from my, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Flair wants to die in the ring, but that's another story.
Yeah, seems like it, oddly, right? I
He
mean,
does.
definitely.
He does. And that's not me being mean or gossipy or anything else. He'll tell you there's no better place to die.
Wow. Yeah, you hear that from a lot of the wrestlers, too. I remember Vader had said that, too.
You get to that point when everything's good. It's when you get a little older and you realize there is a life after the business that you're like, I don't know if I really want to do that or not. I had the same mentality when I was 30. Probably up to about my last 4 or 5 years. Then my last 4 or 5 years, it's like there's something else out there.
Just curious, what is that shirt that you're wearing? What is that?
That's one I made up. I never lost. I ran out of moves.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's
I
on
like
pro
that.
wrestling tees. I don't think it's
Oh,
ever
wow,
sold
okay.
more than 5 or 6, but it's out there. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I didn't realize that. Cool shirt. I like
Yeah.
that. Now, you're saying about current wrestling, you don't watch it, the psychology. It's crazy. It's making more money now than ever, but it does seem more niche.
More than
It's
ever, so
weird.
they're doing something right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
they're doing
it's weird.
something
It's neat,
right.
but it's an interesting niche because it's, I don't know, it isn't to me. Yeah, it's good. And it's not as popular, but somehow they're making more money.
Well, they have figured out how to market the product to modern day TV streaming and so forth,
Yep.
and selling it overseas. It being the package, you buy 26 weeks or 52 weeks or whatever the deals are, and they have figured out how to package that. And that's part of the reason the product's different to us, because the product to us was designed to sell tickets in the arena. And the
Yep.
product today is designed to sell those packages to the cable networks and to England Sky or whatever it is today. I don't even know if it's still Sky. In those days, it was Sky, or Singapore TV, and whatever the network is they're on in India and all these other places that's what it's designed for. It's designed to be a TV show now and nothing more. And somehow or another, they're making billions. So anything you say about I don't like it just kind of goes against the grain of what's taking place at the bank as far as that part goes.
It's crazy. And the MSG show from December, it's like 16,000 there sold out and did the best number for a house show they've ever done financially. The tickets were through the roof, but I mean, they did really good MSG business. So it kind of,
Mhm.
I mean, really, really was like, wow, that kind of raised some eyes. It's like, wow, they best house show business ever, too. Crazy.
Well, I've always said this about the garden. I loved making the garden. That was like a career highlight, was actually making the garden. A kid from Texas, nothing going on, and then no family, no nothing, and I make the garden. I still get goosebumps on that a little bit. But in reality, you've got 10 million people in that metro area. You should be able to put 15, 16, 20,000 in that building.
Right.
Yeah, it's all proportion.
They, I don't know. They did really well for that show. Just crazy to think of like all the Hogan and Bruno and Austin. I know obviously with inflation and everything else, the ticket price is crazy, but just crazy to think of
Oh,
all
yeah.
those names. Like, wow, they sold that many tickets in 2023.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Made that kind of money.
So they should be doing that at the Garden. They should be doing that at the Garden every time. It's kind of a sad statement that they didn't for a while there. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yep.
What are you gonna do? We're not running it. And even though they weren't doing business at the Garden, which is our old metric, like I said, but they just signed how many $1 billion deal with Netflix?
Yeah. 5 billion.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So complaining about the product's ridiculous when you look at those kinds of numbers. It
Yeah.
really
It's like
is.
complain about it all the way. And then Peacock gives them 2 billion. I mean, and then USA
Mhm.
gave them 1 billion. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah, and
Crazy.
then you got the other companies. They're not. I don't know what they're doing, but they're surviving somehow. And
Yep.
it's through the TV revenue, it's through the streaming revenue. So they're doing something correct too.
Now, when you got into WWF, not even just getting the business, I'm just curious, like when you got into
Mhm.
WWF, because you've been in the business for a few years at this point, how do you actually get into the WWF?
I made a phone call. That's
Who'd you
it.
call?
I called Terry Garvin. I've told the story a couple times. I was coming home from Hawaii. I was working for Liam Alvia. And I had just seen what that payday was. I was going home to work for World Class. I knew what those paydays were going to be. And I'm like, this is getting rough. And so I decided I'm going to swallow my pride. I know I'm going to end up doing jobs. I didn't realize how many or how long, but I knew that's what I was going to do. And I was going to find Terry Garber. I knew Terry from Kansas City because he had run the Kansas City office for a few years. And just out of the phone call, I'm like, do you have anything do you have anything for me? Anything I could do for you? Well, I can't promise you full time, anything, up front. I definitely, you'll be doing jobs. I'm like, I told him, I know what you're paying, so book me, let's say and pin me, pay me. I don't care. At the time I had a 3-year-old son and I got to take care of him too. So that's how I got it. I was on the payphone in LA airport. That's how I started.
And he just said, "Hey, pack your bags and head over to wherever."
Phoenix. I'll see you in Phoenix in a few days. And it was Phoenix and Las Vegas. And when he said he couldn't do anything for me full time, he didn't lie. I wasn't full time for about a year, maybe a little longer. That probably a year and a half. And then I was full time for about a year and a half. Year and a half. And then I went back to part time. So, but even part time with them, you're making more money than you are anywhere else, especially when the business is closing up everywhere. The territories are shutting down, and the ones that aren't shut down are paying nothing. It was perfect for me.
When you look at it, like, okay, you're gonna have to do jobs or whatever. You just you kind of just swallow your pride, but the money is great. So that's one of the things where you wouldn't rather be anyplace else, right? Because it's obviously money-driven business.
The only other place that you could have gone at that point in time and made money was Crockett.
Right.
And even though I knew Dusty and I knew Tully and I knew Wahoo and I knew a few other people that were either in or connected to the office, I also knew it was a very cliquish territory. They always were. And I wasn't in anybody's clique, even though, like I said, I knew Tully, I knew Dusty, I knew Wahoo. I knew them fairly well, but they were going to go to bat for me. So that left me with calling the WWE, where I knew Terry. Terry and I always got along. I hated hearing all the stuff that came out later, but that doesn't change the fact that we got along, and I knew I could talk to him. And that's what I did. It was that or stick around, work World Class until they close and make nothing, pick up whatever outlaw shows I could pick up and make a little bit of money. But it's just, there was no way to go.
And you go there pretty much the hottest period too, 87. I mean, Andre is kicking off. I mean, you're going to the hottest company at the hottest period.
Yeah, and I stayed there until there was no money to be made. When they were the 90s, when they were, I don't know how they stayed open for that next year or so. And I left in 93. I don't know how but they did. They survived. But yeah, when I went in, I don't think there's anything hotter until Austin came along and Rock came along. 96, 97, 98, so for 10 years later, there was nothing hotter ever.
Yep.
Unbelievable business. And even in places that, well, this is a bad crowd. And then you're like, nobody else is doing this in a week, all their towns. And this is a bad house. Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when you go there, what is the term that they use for guy? Like, hey, you're going to be an enhancement. Like, what do they call you?
Do they call you enhancement? You're just a worker. You're just another worker. You're just another talent. The boys themselves, they didn't have all the names. You were underneath, or you were in the middle, or you were main event, but you were one of the boys. You were a wrestler. You were a worker. The office had to come up with terms because they were dealing with outside forces at times. So the office would call you enhancement.
I always laugh when I hear some of those terms because it's like, oh, Iron Mike Sharp, a jobber, enhancement guy, carpenter, whatever. But it's like, well, the guy was on TV for 12 years in a row and everyone knows who he is. So it's like, wow, it's all like TV equity. It's awesome to be able to say that. You know what I mean? Like,
it used to bother. I made a lot of money off of it. I made a lot of money off of it because people knew who you were. I used to let it bother me. I don't anymore because I realize that anybody that uses those terms, they're just trying to make themselves feel more important on somebody else.
Right.
That's all it is.
Yeah, because it's
So I
like, wow,
just,
you guys. You know what I mean? Like a fan level, you recognize you guys, Brooklyn Bro, and all these other guys that may have lost a lot of TV, but you saw them every week and you remember them. So it's actually a positive.
when I was still on the road, and then some guys would try to, guys in the back that were smart marks in, the way they started breaking smart marks in through the schools, and they'd start to pop off. I'm like, let's just remember one thing. This is when I let it bother me. Let's remember one thing, guys. I know who you watched on TV, and I know who didn't watch you. And then I would walk off. But then I would always have heat because every once in a while it would be a guy that was connected to the money man, and then that was one more place I have to. Well, there went one bridge. So.
Oh man, damn it! Said it to the wrong guy.
I mean, I have a career of that. So ask James Beard one day; he'll tell you how many bridges I've burned. And a lot of them weren't even on purpose. It was just I said what I thought needed to be said, and it was, like you say, it was the wrong person in the wrong moment. Yeah.
Now, as far as WWF is concerned, and you're there, like you said, basically it's like 6 or 7 years in a row. I mean, you're there for extended period of time. What's the relationship like, if any, with Vince McMahon?
Very little. I had more contact with him in that year or so that I was carrying Zeus around than I did the other 5 combined. But then I had a commodity in the car with me, or I had to get him out of the hotel and to the airport. So I had a reason for Vince to pay attention to me a little bit and talk to me. And how am I doing? How's he doing? Is everything okay? That sort of thing. Other than that, hello, how you doing? Good to see you. And that's it.
Surprised at all with any of these allegations that came out with him?
No. The level of some of the allegations, I'm kind of like, really?
Right.
But as far as the paydays and women and all that's the jobs for, that was going on when I was there. So that part,
Really?
none of that part, none of that part surprises me. Not at all. I mean, it was common knowledge among us. And it's like, my wife said this yesterday, day before yesterday. It's funny how some of these smart marks are all up in arms about, oh my God, how come the scandal rags didn't say this and scandal rags didn't say that, and nobody exposed this, nobody exposed that, and it's like they only know what the office wants you to know. I don't care if it's the top dog Meltzer all the way down to a guy that's just barely getting started. They only know what the office wants you to know. So that's why some of this is a shock to some people. It's not been publicized, but we knew, we saw it. We were there, and even though I wasn't right up under him, like Hogan or Savage or Jake or somebody like that, they were my friends, and we talked. We knew.
Now, this was Vince, or this is all the guys in the office?
We pretty much knew what was going on in the office. Period. We may not have known the levels of what was taking place. Yeah, what my wife called degradation. She's on the other side of the room here. We didn't know the depths of just how nasty some of it was. But we knew Vince had girlfriends. We knew this guy had girlfriends. We knew this guy had boyfriends. We knew. We were on the road with them all the time. Same buildings with them all the time. Their flights with them, all the cars. You knew. It was just, you saw them more than you saw your family sometimes.
Crazy business.
I don't know that we're that much different than a lot of other businesses. It's just we take it to different levels. Honestly, especially when you have free time and money in your pocket. You have the ability and you have the cash to do what most folks are doing anyway, just at different levels.
Gotcha.
Most people have their kinks. Most people have their problems or their issues, or nobody's different on that one. It's just when you have, and it doesn't help when you're on that TV and people are handing it to you just to be around. It doesn't help the cause at all. It doesn't make it right. It makes it easier. It just makes it even easier.
Right, I can see that. I remember Jake the Snake said a quote just like that. He's like, "Man, you just get handed anything and everything." It just made it just like not even a decision. It's just okay. I'll go with it.
including the people themselves. They're right there for you. It doesn't make it right. I'm not justifying it. It makes it easier. Makes it easier to do wrong.
Yep. So just getting back on track with Zeus, what was going on with him? How come you were like basically, I guess maybe his bodyguard or maybe his like driving around and stuff?
I was his keeper. I was his keeper. There's no two ways about it. Well, you got to realize there's nobody that's going to just walk in to the wrestling industry, business machine, whatever you want to call it, 89, where we're working 250 days a year, sometimes 11, 12, 15 straight days, that many different towns, that many hotels, that many cars. You don't know. And he had no way of keeping all that organized. He had no clue. And so they take somebody like me that I know. I've been on the road for years now. And they pay me to get him from town to town and make sure, it's kind of like what Tim White would do for Andre.
Right.
Even though Andre knew how to travel, he and Frenchie before Tim White, when he was in the territories. There are certain people you just kind of get them around. Like Andre wasn't because he didn't know. He had to have help, being Andre and not fitting in places and so forth. But Zeus had no clue. Not that he was a bad guy or a dumb man, whatever. No one could walk in off the street and do what we were doing in those days. Couldn't do it. So you have to put him with someone that knows the system. And I knew. And so, can you do this? Yes, this is what you're going to be paid, plus you'll work, and then you'll get your paydays for working. And I'm like, I'd be crazy to turn that down. And
right.
I didn't. Yeah.
So were you training him too, like getting him ready for Hulk?
I was a part of the package. By that, I was the one taking the bumps. Hogan was showing what he wanted. Beefcake was there. Savage was there part of the time, and he was in a couple of times. And Zeus only trained for like 2 weeks. And Patterson was there. And those were the only, and Mike Graham, I take it because we were at Sportatorium in Tampa. And the only one that was going to take the bumps was me. Those guys aren't taking bumps in the ring while they're training. So they just walked him through what they wanted him to do for like about 2 weeks. And then that's what he did, was whatever they had walked him through.
Do you think he needed more training though? I mean, obviously,
if he was going to stick around, yes. If he was going to stick around, no doubt. For what they wanted out of him, it was perfect. One or two matches, and he ended up doing like 4, 5 pay-per-views, 4.
SummerSlam, No Holds Barred, Survivor Series, yep.
And then they had that one in December.
Yeah, No Holds Barred, the match in the movie, yep.
So they did 4, right? The original plan was just 2.
4, yeah.
The original plan was just 2 matches.
Okay.
Do the one, and then come back at Survivor and blow it off. But he drew him money, so they kept him around. The movie didn't make any money, but Zeus and the Towns did, and so they kept him around. They even offered him a deal. Yeah, look, and they even offered him to a deal. I said he brought me in because Patterson was talking to him. He brought me in because he didn't know everything Patterson was talking about, and he trusted me. And what they were going to do, they were going to put him on the road starting in January. They weren't going to work him full time. He would have like every other tour or whatever, and train him in between the tours. And the money wasn't worth it to him. But that's how much he had drawn on those pay-per-views. They were looking to bring him in to put him in the Towns.
He had the look, the size, the charisma, no doubt about it.
He had everything Vince loved. He had everything Vince loved.
Damn, that would have been actually kind of cool. I mean, I was always kind of a big fan just because of No Holds Barred.
I think it would have ended up exposing him. I mean, it was already obvious that he was green and blah, blah, blah. But it didn't stop him from selling tickets at the time, or pay-per-view buys. It didn't stop that from happening. Had you put him out there and you're training, on the job training almost, it would have exposed him.
him and Hogan obviously did make some money together. So they,
Mm-hmm.
3 pay-per-views or whatever it was, pretty
Mm-hmm.
good. Can't complain about that. That's
So
pretty
other
good.
people weren't doing that at the time. Yeah. So he made some money. The fact that they kept him around as long as they did, that should tell you anything you need to know about what kind of return on investment they had with him.
So that year, 89, basically, when you're working with them, that's probably your best year financially because you're getting paid extra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Until I started teaching. Yeah. Yeah.
And if you look at it, 89 was huge for WWF because Hogan and Savage when the Mega Powers
Yeah.
exploded. So another
Yeah.
hot period you're there for.
We could, until the scandals hit, 91 when the scandals hit, business was good. So, that's those 3 or 4 years, almost 4 years that I was there. We could tell you, just looking at our checks, if we knew we were in Hogan Towns anyway, but if we had forgotten which town we were in, we could look at our check and we could tell it was a Hogan Town. And if you saw you check it, let's say 3 months later and they were in the same town and it wasn't a Hogan Town, you saw the difference, is what I'm getting at. He was still that big a draw. And it was, till the last little bit, 90 or so. Yeah.
He,
And
to
then we
me,
saw our checks. Yeah.
He, to me, is
We
like,
saw our checks start to fall off a little bit with Warrior.
that's what, because to me, you could tell he's the biggest star ever. And then when the Warriors are champ, it starts to go down. Okay, let's get him back on top again. Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. We saw the difference. We could tell.
When you're there, all the guys that you wrestled, did you really wrestle pretty much everyone there? Maybe minus Hogan or what?
Yeah, there's no 2 ways about it, including guys that never got a job. But it was their tryout, and they would give like me or Lombardi or Barry to them because they knew we could work with anybody. I'm sitting here doing the numbers in my head, and Hogan's probably the only name I didn't work with that was in there during that time. Yeah.
You did work Jake. You did work Steamboat. You worked Savage. You worked Warrior. I know that.
Mm-hmm. You go down the list. I've worked with him somewhere. Even if it wasn't TV, it was a house show. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. Like just the fact that okay, I'm in there with pretty much anybody who's everybody. So big trust factor, obviously, as well.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way then. But when you look back, you realize that there was like a little clique of us that, like you call it, a trust factor. It was, it was like the guys I just mentioned: Barry, Steve, Iron Mike, myself, Jimmy Powers. More so the first 4 that I mentioned. It was like they knew we could go with anybody. And it may not be the greatest, but they knew we would get done what they wanted done, and they'd be in the office. And there were times where it was me, Horowitz, Steve. Especially me, Horowitz, and Steve. We'd end up working 2 and 3 times a night at TVs because we would end up with 1 or 2 tryout matches on top of whatever else we were doing. Yeah.
Do they actually your advice after the tryout match?
Every once in a while. For me, they would always ask, how'd it go? Was he stiff? That sort of thing. They always ask that. The details, not a lot of details. They just, how was he to work with? Was he cooperative? That sort of thing. Yeah.
So you're on TV a lot, though. Superstars, Wrestling Challenge, even like MSG, which is on the MSG network. I mean, you're always on TV. Did you do a lot of house shows, or was it mostly TV?
I did quite a few. I honestly say I was only on the booking sheet in '89 because the rest of the time my house shows were like, I'm at TV and hey, can you finish out this trip? Okay, or I'd be home thinking, okay, I'm home for the next couple of days. I get a phone call, we need you in the next 4 towns. That was a lot of my house shows, replacement stuff, but I didn't care. It paid the same. But yeah, gotcha. I probably, doing the math, I would probably have had a couple hundred TV matches and at least twice that many house show matches.
What did you think of the Ultimate Warrior? Obviously, you worked him plenty of times.
It was hard to work with. It was just stiff. I mean, he was just stiff. Warrior didn't care. Personally, I could get along with him. I knew him when he started, or after Memphis and went to Dallas. I knew at that point of his starting. Uh, he'd spent that little bit of time in Watts too, I think, but he hadn't been in the business long when I met him. And he would talk to me when he wasn't talking to other people, but I also wasn't a threat to him. But working with him was brutal. He was the guy that you legitimately were counting the time down in your head. Oh, please, please, hurry, hurry. How long can I sell this bump before he grabs me again? And that sort of thing. Because it was just, if he didn't care. He did not care.
Another guy Vince would love, or obviously did love, the look, the size, the charisma. Obviously, all that was in spades for him.
Yeah, well, he was Vince's creation.
Yep.
Ultimate Warrior is what Vince would have been if Vince could have been allowed to be a wrestler when he was a young man and his dad still had everything. And his dad said, "No, you'll never wrestle." But the Ultimate Warrior, just the name, Ultimate, and then the look and all that was pure Vince. It was all Vince. And that's part of the reason Vince made sure he had the belt. And Vince didn't let him completely fail because he was Vince.
Hey, interesting. A lot of people say $1 Million Man was Vince, like that mindset.
That was Vince's. There were like 3 or 4 guys that they were Vince. $1 Million Man was like what he would be if he kicked it in gear and was publicizing himself or whatever, the arrogance and the money and that. But that was also an extension of Dr. Jerry Graham too, because Dr. Jerry Graham was his hero.
Yep.
And a lot of what DiBiase would do on camera, the doctor did it in real life. So he was an extension of Jerry Graham and Vince combined. The other guy for sure that was an extension of Vince was Sean. The attitude and the ego, all of that. Sean was an extension of Vince. But as far as a creation, I've taken and molded this from a pile of clay into this new wrestling god. The Ultimate Warrior was Vince's creation from the ground up.
But you just didn't like working with him. Too stiff, too snug.
He was horrible as far as, I don't know what he was like with some of the top guys. I know Andre knocked him out. I was there that night. I actually saw Andre knock him out. I heard other guys talk about him. No, he was doing the thing where he ran into a fist. Andre they had like a 30-second match. They had like a 2-minute match. And no matter what they did, he would run into an Andre clothesline. And then we were in Indianapolis or someplace in that direction. And I was playing cards with Andre in the back, and he's like, "Boss, don't get stiff with me tonight. I'm hurting." Yeah, okay. And he looked at me and he says, "This may not go good." I'm okay. So I made sure I watched. And Warrior hit the ropes, and he was going to do the clothesline. And instead of clothesline, Andre just put that big hand out. And he ran right into the hand, right there, and he was just down. And then Andre had to pick him up so he could go into the finish because he was putting the Warrior over every night.
Right.
Yeah, he had to pick him up and wake him up. Yeah.
Wow, geez. I always heard that story that Andre was kind of fed up with him for stiffing him too much.
He hit him. I mean, like I said, he didn't even really just swing. He just put the fist up. Kind of a double cross. The Warrior's going to go for the clothesline. Just put it up there. That was it. Knocked him out. Ran right into it.
A little revenge for stiffing him, for sure.
I don't think they ever had a problem after that. I really don't.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so, especially with Andre. I wouldn't think so. Now, in the late 89, obviously, when you're doing the Zeus stuff, but they changed your name to Dale Wolfe because Dusty Rhodes is coming in. Whose choice is that name, and did you mind being Dale instead?
Well, it's my middle name. So I had to do that in Florida. I went down to Florida. We were the Hollywood Blondes, and Eddie Graham walked in, and we were at TV the very first time we were in Florida. he looked at that and says, "We can't do that." And I'm like, I didn't know what he's talking about in the moment. I'm a young kid. I'm not looking over his shoulder or anything. This is Eddie Graham, right? And he says, "You can't be Dusty." And I said, "That's been my name for a long time. I don't care. Dusty Rhodes, Florida. You can't do it." It made sense to me in Florida. So I'm like, okay. And I just used my middle name, Dale. So yeah, late 89, Pat come to me at catering and we're going to have to change your name. We're going to change my name. Who did I piss off? I didn't know Dusty was coming in. What did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. Dusty's coming in. And I remember I was so tempted to ask Pat what they can't tell us apart. But I liked my job. But I liked my job, right? So I'm like, well, I'm telling him the story of what I just told you. Eddie made me do the same thing in Florida, so just use my middle name. And that's where that came from.
They just asked, what name do you prefer? And they just went with Dale because they...
Yeah, we're going to change your name. And they gave me the option. They didn't just let me walk out and all of a sudden I've got this, I don't even know who they're talking about situation going on. They didn't do that to me. Yeah, Pat came to me and asked me.
Now, you stayed Dale for a while, right? Even after Dusty left. Right?
I didn't have any choice. It was their doing. I didn't argue. My check had the right name on it. So, okay.
If you do argue or say anything, there's no it's not like a two-way street, right? I mean, it's just basically their way of the highway.
At that point in my life, not in that office, no. No, if I want to keep making more than I probably should have been making, if I want to keep making that, I'll just go, okay, thank you. Yeah.
It doesn't matter
to
you.
You have to have a little position of making them some money before you start having that pull. That's anywhere. That's
right.
That's any job. You can't make demands unless you've got something to offer in return.
But obviously, the most important thing is, they're paying you, and hey, okay, well, I'll make the curve, if you will. I'll make the change.
It's like, you're still beating me, and I'm still in the same spot I was in the day before. So, okay. Yeah.
Had Dusty ever said anything about it?
No, he knew. I mean, I knew him from the time I broke in. I knew him from the time I broke in. So he didn't care. If he did, he never said a word to me.
Was he like a good guy, friend of yours? You got along with him?
I don't know about friend. Part of what helped me with him was I was pretty tight with Dickie. And so if I'm okay with Dickie, I'm okay with him. But he was a little aloof. I mean, Dusty was always a little dickish. It wasn't bad to me. It wasn't, but you could just see, he had his friends and he had his group. And you can see it with his booking too. You don't have to just take my word for it. You can see everywhere he booked and wherever he went. You can see, here comes Wyndham. Here comes this guy. Here comes that. He had his people. It made money for him. But like I say, being tight with Dickie helped me with him. It really did.
When he leaves, they never say, "Hey, you could be Dusty Wolfe again." You never say, "Hey, I could be Dusty Wolfe."
No, I didn't. Like I say, my checks read the same. They cashed the same. They went in my bank account the same. So I'm just like, are you happy? Yeah, I'm happy. Okay, good. Let's go. Keep me employed.
Wrestled, by the way, Undertaker as well, young Undertaker at that point when he was coming up. Did you see, okay, this guy's going to be huge? Or were you like, okay, another big guy that Vince brings in and let's see if it can work kind of thing?
Revisionist history, I would love to say, I knew up front.
Right.
The reality is I had been brought up with all these old school guys, and you're like, is this going to work? In the very beginning, is this dead man's just sitting up going to work and things like that. You had to wonder. And it didn't take long for everybody in the business to realize this is going to work. And I don't know that anybody knew he was going to be there 30 years later, but you knew this was going to work within a few months. You really did. You could just
one of those things.
One of those
things like 1880s Undertaker. Like, is this going to get over? I don't know.
Exactly. When you first see it, it's like I don't know how this is going to happen, and because it was just so different than anything had been seen in 1990. It hadn't been, or 91, whatever it was. This has never been, nothing like this has been seen before. But like I say, it didn't take 6 months, and you're like, this is going to work. this is gonna make some money, especially when they put him with Percy.
Yeah.
Once they put him with Percy, and Percy could do the oh, and even though he didn't get involved in the match as much, he did add to everything that was going on, and then it really took off.
Look at your resume from WWF, and you're like, wow, Ric Flair, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, War. I mean, everybody. And you worked Flair obviously a bunch of times. So man, it's just crazy when you look at all the guys you wrestled. Pretty awesome to, I guess, have that on the resume or on the sheets. Like, hey, look at all the guys that work. Luger. You throw a bunch of guys.
It didn't get me through college, and it doesn't pay me today. But yeah, it's memory wise when you want to have your memories and you want to think back to what you had and so forth. There's very few names from that time period, or even just slightly before my time period. But the guys that were still around, there's very few names I didn't get in the ring with. Very few.
When you look back at the WWF and it's like, okay, you're about to leave, is there like a contract thing that's up in '93, or what was the issue with just basically being gone? Did
Money.
they kind of money? Okay,
money had gotten so bad that I wasn't getting a lot of bookings anyway, because they had cut from 3 towns to 2 towns a night. So that's a money situation. It had nothing to do with any of the talent or as far as what we were doing. It's just they had to draw back. So when they're running fewer towns, there's less work to begin with. And then I went and made a Canadian tour, and I got like an IOU instead of a check because of the exchange rate and taking my draws, etc. I would take 200 every, and then I'd bring my cash home and use that. And then my checks show up, I would just put that in the bank, that sort of thing. That way I always had a cash flow. And I made Canada for like 3 days, and I ended up with I owed the office like $50 after the exchange rate and everything, taxes, because Canada always takes your taxes out of you before they ever send you a check. Yeah. And if people think I'm crazy, I'm not. I'm like, I can't justify this. They're not going to do anything with it. 6 years later, they're not going to do anything with me where this might turn around, where I'll go from the bottom to the middle, or it's not happening after 6 years. I've been beat by everybody there is. So there's nothing left there. And then the money wasn't worth sticking around for.
How was the money in WCW? Because you did go to WCW for a little bit after that, Wrestle Sting.
Yeah, I was there for about 3 years. In and out. I never went full time with them. It was guaranteed money. It's a good thing about WCW is I don't know how many nights I showed up, signed my name, and left, and never even opened my bag because they'd have like 2 or 3 times more talent than they needed for the show.
Just a mistake?
No, that's just the way they ran business in those days. Yeah, we'd go do those 10 days in Orlando, and we would do those syndicated TVs.
Yep.
Or the Saturday TV, whatever TV it was in Orlando.
Saturday Night, Pro, Main Event.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yep. They would do like 4 tapes per day for 10 days. And I never worked more than 5 or 6 times.
Not too bad. Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah. The only problem is you had to stay there the entire time. There was no going home, coming back, whatever. You showed up, signed your name. And if you didn't end up on the board, you left. So in one way, it was for me, it was a tremendous deal. I'm getting a guarantee no matter what. Business-wise, there's no way they were going to survive that way, and they didn't. But
not too bad.
I jumped over there at the right time when they were just throwing money at people. Just oh, you're here. Here you go.
It's funny, like if you really look at it, it's like you wrestled, everywhere, like global for a while. Remember UWF with Herb Abrams? You wrestled for a little bit. Obviously, I mentioned Puerto Rico before. I mean, it's crazy. You were everywhere. That's pretty good to have that ability.
Kansas City, Memphis, Florida, the old Savoli territory for ICW, Southwest Championship Wrestling, World Class. I think that's pretty much the territories that I worked. And then overseas, I've made 20 some odd countries, probably about 30 different tours, but some of the tours are the same places. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place you worked?
As far as the workload, whenever we go to Africa was great. We only work like 2 days a week. As far as talent, local talent, England, those guys are just tremendous workers. I always loved Singapore. I love going to Singapore. Yeah.
How about promotion wise? What's your favorite promotion?
That's good because I worked for Steve Ricard, and Steve was one of the most honest men that was ever in the business. So, and we would go to Singapore and India for Steve. India was a little rough, but Singapore was beautiful. Yeah, and like I said, working for Steve, you didn't have any worries. You might have local issues. You might have to worry about somebody hitting the ring on you or setting the building on fire or something like that.
Right.
But there was no worry about your money. He knew how to put shows together. It was professional. So Steve was tremendous.
Who's the worst promoter you ever worked for?
Oh, God. How long have we got? Because there were a ton of them on the independent scene. I don't even remember all their names, to be honest with you. As far as anybody that you would recognize name-wise, Carlos and Jovica.
Really? Wow.
They abused the boys. They just abused the boys. Especially when I first went in '86, they didn't abuse the boys that much. They just stole from us a little bit. But we knew that. That was every promoter that we ever worked for. Even the honest ones stole from us a little bit. That was just the nature of the business. It's a cash flow business. You know what's happening. When I went in 91, 93, they knew we didn't have a lot of options. And by then, Carlos had developed a gambling habit. And they just abused the boys. They really did. Yeah.
When you look at Herb Abrams, he wasn't that bad, huh? He was okay?
I always worked for worked with his or dealt with his office people. I never really dealt with Herb. But he had a gold mine and just screwed it himself. Just blew it up his nose, just so he could hang around the boys. He had a great TV time. He had a great TV syndication. He had I don't want to say his choice of talent, but he had a choice of some solid talent, and he just didn't care. He got to hang around the boys. He got to stay stoned, and he just ruined it. Yeah. So that's why I put him on the list of worst, because he such wasted potential. That's the best way to put it. It was just completely wasted potential.
Now, as we hit the wind down, we head towards the finish here. I know you did play Doink a bunch of times. Did you ever play Doink in the WWF?
Not beyond just going out and like making an appearance and running around the ring and that sort of thing. And that was it. I mean, only just a few times, very few times. It was one of those things where promoters would ask me, would you do it? And yeah, I can do it. And then more promoters would ask me to do it. And one day Vince sent word to me through Percy that he was okay with me doing everything. Just don't do anything stupid. Don't go on people's TV and get beat. Don't go do something stupid like getting arrested in the gimmick out behind the building or something. Just take care of the gimmick, and he won't say anything to you. And that came straight out of the office. Because that same time, Percy told me, says, they talk about you in the meetings every once in a while. I'm like, man, because when I was working with Steve in places like that, overseas stuff, they knew everything was going on, and they knew who was helping book. And so you'll come up in the production meetings on occasion because they want to know South Africa, or they want to know Singapore, or wherever else, India, wherever else we were going, and Japan, or whatever. And really, and he says, yeah, and they know you're doing the gimmick too. And I'm like, well, nobody said anything to me, and they're not going to. And that's when he gave me the message. So,
so they didn't mind, basically.
No, I had done right by them for years, and they knew I was just trying to make a living. And as they said, don't do something stupid. Don't go out on somebody else's TV and get beat in the gimmick. Don't go out and be arrested in the snow in the gimmick for whatever charges might have happened. Just take care of everything. Take care of business, and nobody will say anything. That's what was said to me, and that was the end of it. I never heard another word.
Looking back, just at everybody, you wrestled, everybody you worked. Who's like some of your all-time favorites? Because literally, you're the perfect person because you've almost wrestled literally almost everybody.
There's some good guys on the independent scene that you've probably never heard of that were really good talents. I always loved working with Tracy Smothers. The top guys on the list of who you would think, the Martells and the Titos and the Shawns and the Martys and the Hennigs and Jake, DiBiase. I mean, you go through that list. They were all good talent, great talents, and you couldn't do anything but have a good match with them and learn. Jacques Rougeau, guys like that, some of them that you wouldn't even think of, but they were just that talented. Like I say, Tracy was always a great guy to work with on the independent scene. I'm trying to think of who else. I liked working with Hector Guerrero. I always had a great match with Hector. He was carrying me, but it was like I didn't care. Rock and roll. I worked with Rock and Roll more than once. If you couldn't have a great match with those two, you should just hang up your boots and never show back up. That sort of thing. Dickie. Great matches with Dickie. The list is long of guys that I can't just pick one.
It's amazing. All the guys you work with, like it's crazy. The resume is at its world crazy.
They were talent. They were talent. And like I said, I'm short listing it a little bit, and I'm also not giving some of the local guys or the independent guys credit because I honestly don't remember all their names, but there was some of them down through the years that they were surprising how good you could work with them. Like I like Steve Anthony down there in the Bayou or Northcutt, Rod Price. Guys like that. Yeah, those guys were great. Rod was stiff now, but you could have a good match with him. You could go out and tear the place down with Rod. You really could.
You're Texas boy, Texas buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's next for you? Anything wrestling related coming down the pike?
No. I haven't done a convention. I've done none. I helped a couple of friends a little bit and behind the scenes, what little bit I could when I first retired, because you just can't quite get away, and it's like the mafia or a disease or both. And after both of those fell apart, well, one died. I haven't done anything. I've done nothing. Nobody's ever. Well, I've had one person ask me about a convention one time, and it was like last minute, and I'm like, I can't do that. But no, I don't do the reunions. I don't. I talk to somebody now and then, or talk to one of my old friends now and then, and that's it. That's all I have to do with it.
Any regrets about the business? Anything you missed about it?
On occasion, I'd like to, some places I would have liked to have seen. Anyway, as far as that goes, that's it. Regrets, I've always had a belief that if you have regrets, you would make changes. And if you make changes, you don't end up where you are at. So,
yeah.
Well, we know that if you make changes in the past and you don't end up where you're at. Are there things I would have been smarter about? Yeah. Personally and professionally, yes. But then what kind of changes would that have created? So regrets are for those that didn't make the changes or didn't improve themselves in some ways. And again, like I said, the biggest part for me is if you start making too many changes, I'm happy where I'm at now. And I'm doing well. I mean, I'm physically beat up. I'm the surgeries and all that fun stuff, but I've got a good family. I've got great grandkids. I got a 10-year-old that I never thought I would have. I got a crazy wife. We've got a nonprofit that we're running because she's an attorney, and I help her a little bit with her nonprofit on top of her job. I enjoy the teaching. I really do. I enjoy talking with my students and getting an idea where the young kids are at. It's not like the old man get off my lawn almost there, but it's true. I enjoy that back and forth. I really do. So, long-winded? No, I don't. I don't miss anything outside of the fact that I didn't see a couple places I really wanted to see. And I don't miss the car wrecks. I don't miss the having to ice yourself down in a bed it's falling apart. I don't miss getting home at 4 in the morning and not remembering the last hour of the drive, and not because I was drunk or stoned, just because I was driving asleep. I don't miss any of that. I don't miss not being home for birthdays. I don't miss not being home for an anniversary. I don't miss any of that. Those are the sacrifices we make, and we do them willingly, but you don't ever get it back either.
Of course, Journal of a Journeyman, your book is out there. Like you said, it is on Amazon. Where can everybody follow you and find you? Do you do social media?
Yeah, I got Facebook. I've got Twitter. I'll warn anybody. If you don't like a political opinion, you might not want to follow me. But because every once in a while I'll go off on these idiots. At least I see them as idiots. At least I see them as idiots.
Yeah.
I could be the one that's wrong. Who knows? But other than that, yeah, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. Like I say, I just warn folks up front because I'm definitely. Some reason other people think I'm a MAGA, and they want them to get mad at me, and I'm like, I don't even know who the hell you are. Beyond that, yeah, look me up.
Well, Dusty Wolfe, great to get you back on after all these years. Thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.